Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Obviously, what's going on in Ukraine, the big story sucking all the oxygen out of the air everywhere. Not going to spend a lot of time on that today. Everyone is talking about it. The atrocity, the horrible conditions. It's horrible. It's just horrible. I mean, it's unimaginable. It makes no sense. I don't see the aim. I don't see the reason. I don't see a rationale. It is doing a very nice job dividing the globe. We could have a new economy. We could have a new Cold War. This could recreate the entire, and this may be the point. The point may be recreating the globe in a way where, well, we have two polar opposite positions and two polar opposite economies. And I don't know that the Chinese are ready for that yet, but it may just be taking us in that direction. And because what's amazing is how quickly Joe Biden has brought the world together. And if there's one thing that I can give him credit for, he answered the phone at 3 a.m. That phone call, he was there. He brought this globe together. Look at what's happening. Look how quickly. That is leadership. That is something the former guy never could have done. Now, if you're watching the mass exodus of corporate America from Russia for good reason, McDonald's, Starbucks, everybody's leaving. Everybody. They've all announced going. And I think that what's going on with this basketball player, this Brittany Griner, is a big part of this. I don't think anybody wants to be left behind and being used as Putin's pawn, as this poor girl is going to be used. And this is a horrible atrocity. And Putin is going to use this to his advantage, and sadly. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. But the good thing is the globe is uniting. The aid package evidently growing larger and larger as Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has reported. It's up to $14 billion with a B dollars. We're going to be moving over to Ukraine to help with the humanitarian and the aid packet over there. Also, the big news, obviously, today, the banning of Russian oil. This is potentially one of those trap kind of thingies. Now, understand, the latest Wall Street Journal poll, 79%. Understand, Wall Street Journal, newspaper of the investor class, 79% said they were in favor of banning Russian oil imports. Agreed. Only 13% said they opposed it. 79% ban it. So Congress did it. Finally, the people have spoken. Congress did this. Now, Republicans going to use this to their advantage because this is what they do. They went out. They said, we're going to ban this. And almost immediately turned around and pointed the finger at Joe Biden. Gas prices are all Joe Biden's fault. It's all Joe Biden's fault. It's all Joe Biden's fault. We were energy independent. When the former guy was in charge, that 1 year, that one moment, we were completely energy independent. That 1 year when we were all locked in our house. That 1 year where we weren't going anywhere. You remember that 1 year? Remember that 1 year? Remember that 1 year where nobody went anywhere because nothing was open? Remember that 1 year? Yeah, I remember that year. That was the year we were energy independent. Yeah, that year. Yeah, see, nobody remembers it was that year. But we said, we were energy independent. And it was that guy. That guy did it. That guy did it because he so badly bungled the coronavirus. Yeah, give him credit where credit is due. He allowed the virus to spread far and wide enough and didn't do enough to make sure that then we were all then locked down in our homes where nobody could go anywhere. And then, only then, could we then be energy independent. Brilliant! Oh my gosh, I wish I would have thought of that myself. and look, there are conservatives running around saying this. I had a guy tell me that today. Well, under the former guy, we were energy independent. Joe Biden comes to office and, this, that, and the other thing. You go, hey, dingwing. You do know that as Biden got into office, the economy started opening back up. People had disposable income that they had been, saving up because, hey, they're all, got to get out, got to do things. And supply and demand, that's what causes prices to fluctuate. If you have a huge demand for something, the costs go up. So if there are more people, wanting something, clearly prices go up. That's what it is. More people wanting to go places, more people wanting to do things. That's what does it. Not the president. And look, I never gave Trump credit or beat him up for gas prices one way or the other because he doesn't have a switch in the White House. There is no switch in the Oval Office. Let me be very, very clear. There is no switch. No switch. He doesn't even get to set the cost of a hamburger at McDonald's. I know, right? If you're president, you should at least be able to do that, right? At least that's what some people think. And the reality is they don't. And this is the bizarre thought process of people in this country that you go, hey, you do realize that the president's got other things to do. He's not going through the checklist at the local grocery store going, lima beans are 89 cents a can. We should jack that up to $1.05. He's not doing that. That, my friends, that's corporate America's job. That's your CEO's job, who, if you've been listening to the earnings calls, oh my goodness, are they stiffing us big time? They are doing really, really well. Really well. Oh my God, are they doing well? Corporate profits. Stock buybacks. Oh, gosh. Warm and fuzzy, things leaking down the legs. Amazing. Amazing. Oh, my gosh. So happy. And who ends up getting the short end of the stick? Who ends up having to clean up, literally have to clean up all the mess? We do. And then what happens is, the outrage machine, the chaos merchants on the right, the Republicans, they're out there going, it's Joe Biden's fault. It's the Democrats' fault. It's their fault. They're ruining the country. It's not our billionaires. It's not our oligarchs. Explain to me this. I got a question. Why is it that in Russia the billionaires are oligarchs, but our billionaires are job creators? I'm trying to figure that out. Why is that? Why is that they're oligarchs because they do the same function. They're stealing from both of us. They're robbing us blind. Why is there a difference? Just, I guess, better PR? Better, I don't know, better communications guy? Maybe John Barron works for one of them. And for those who don't know, John Barron was Donald Trump's kind of alter ego when he didn't have a communications person, and he would call people as he would be John Barron. I'm John Barron. John Barron for, Yeah, crazy. Now, here's the thing. Republicans did vote for the ban, wanted it, pushed for it, were crazy about it. If you listen to Fox News, they're nuts about it. Nuts about it. Biden's buying oil. Biden is buying oil. I had someone tell me Biden's buying oil. I'm going, no, I don't think Biden has any oil in his backyard. I think Shell, I think Exxon, I think BP, I think all Texaco, I think all of those companies, I think they're buying it and they're bringing it in. I don't think Biden's buying anything. Now, we as a country allow it to be imported. Maybe we should stop that. Maybe Congress, who has the power of the purse? Oh, yeah, Congress. Maybe we should propose a piece of legislation, which is what they did. And good on them. They have banned it. It's happened. Now, here's the problem. Elections coming up, and Republicans know it. And they're going to use it. They're going to use it as a Joe Biden got gas prices up to $4.50 a gallon. Because, look, I think they're going to hit $5 a gallon. I think it's going to get bad, and I think Republicans are going to go, yay, crisis. We get to take advantage. We get to beat up Biden over gas prices. Because, look, right now his approval ratings jumping up because he's doing a great job on being the leader of the free world. His approval ratings up now to 51% in the last Morning Consult Politico poll. And that has everything to do with the fact that he has brought the world together and he has been the leader that we have needed. But on the economy is still going to be a problem because gas prices are going to be a problem. And the right, our chaos merchants, our outraged candy people, they can't wait. And I'm hearing it already because today I had a rather spirited discussion. And this is where the whole gas prices thing comes up. Because, I'm going, look, at the end of the day, gas prices are what they are because of a couple of things. One, we've got more people on the road. We've got more people driving bigger cars. We've got more people back into the economy. There's now a huge rush. Whereas, in that year, remember that year where we were energy independent? You had a bunch of companies shutting down, slowing down production. You had that stalling. You don't just get to fire that stuff back up. But everyone goes, no, hey, Keystone XL, Textile Pipeline, yeah, it's that. You go, well, there's a problem with that. And I was not against the idea of building the pipeline to, Chicago, and then mandating it stay. But that's not what it does. And this is my problem. My problem is we're gonna cut a pipeline right through one of the more pristine parts of the country, what's left. And we're gonna put it in places that, right over one of our main water supplies in the entire country. And it's not gonna help us. It's gonna literally go into the international community. It's gonna go overseas. It's gonna go into the international market. And this is where my problem then is. You put it to Chicago, you refine it here, you ship it across the country, and we drop gas down to, $1 a gallon. Then we can talk. But this idea that we're just going to shoot it right through, we're going to take the dirtiest possible oil and we're going to shoot it right through the middle of our country and put it out into the international community is nuts. We should have been decades ago moving towards alternative energies quickly. And right now, we should be Manhattan Project mentality. We should be speeding full steam ahead. National security, oh my God, national emergency, do it now. But here's the thing. We have this training. We've been trained like Pavlovian dogs. We've been all wound up that the economy has to be a certain way, that the wealth class they can be the only ones that benefit, that, poor people are lazy and stupid and all this stuff. And, I got into this conversation, as I said, rather spirited today, about something Biden said in his State of the Union address. Biden said that he wants to build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out, which is something that I absolutely agree with. Without question, 100%. I've been saying that for decades. Nothing new on my end. As opposed to the top-down, trickle-down nonsense that we've been sold for decades. That hasn't worked. The supply-side voodoo Reaganomics, the neoliberal nonsense that has, made rich people really freaking rich. And poor people, not so much. And on Monday, and this is where this conversation went, on Monday, the Biden administration put out a report, an interesting report that I thought, worth kind of chatting about. It said that employers face very little competition when they're looking for working people. When they need workers, there's not much competition. And by not having much competition, it allows them to keep pay down. It allows them to have this kind of power that pushes wages down. And what they were saying is, what this report says is, by having this power, this incredible power, as high as a quarter of your pay, as much as 25%, they hold wages down. If you stop and think about this. So this idea that there's a competition out there and there are people who are fighting for is not reality. Especially when you look at the fact that, upwards of 20 to 25% of workers sign non-compete agreements. Freaking Jimmy John's sandwich shop made their workers sign non-compete agreements. Which means, stop and think about this, a minimum wage worker would have to sign a non-compete agreement, which means he can't leave or she can't leave that job to go across the street to work at a diner and make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, because somehow PB&J is proprietary to the Jimmy John over there. And he could, I swear you not, this is what their argument was. Because a piece of bread with some slop in the middle and another piece of bread, that's trade secret. And why do they do this? They do this so people don't move around. So workers don't go $7.25, $8 an hour, unusual schedules, unpredictable schedules, harassment, intimidation, sexual harassment, poor treatment from customers, poor treatment from management. I'm not taking this. I'm going to go somewhere where they're going to treat me better. Oh. You signed a non-compete. And you go, how is it possible that? You think non-competes for people, who, no, they've used that kind of stuff all over the place. And then you throw in all of the other little trickery that they throw in. Outsourcing, for instance. Having all these contractors. If you get too uppity and start demanding those wages, we might just go and outsource that job of yours to a contractor, to a gig worker. And you see this in a number of industries. That holds wages down. Because people start going, whoa, I better not ask for too much. You look at all the mergers and acquisitions. I mean, the hospital industry. I was just talking to a nurse the other day, and she was saying, the place that she works at, they're worried about being taken over by the big behemoth in our area. Because there's one big behemoth that is literally eating up everything. And as soon as that happens, wages go down. They take over something, those places, benefits get worse, wages go down. It's what they do. Because where else do you go? So again, the competition, well, where else are you going to go? I go back to years and years ago. When I first started working, there were, hundreds of unionized trucking companies, all paying, good wages, all had good healthcare benefits, defined benefit pension. If one company didn't treat you well, you went to another one. Now most of them are doing all of this stuff. And the wages have been, suppressed. And you look at what's happened and you go, but why is this a big deal, Rick? Well, this is a big deal because over the last 45 years, what we have seen, and this is not me saying this alone, this is the Rand Corporation. This is not some hippie liberal left-wing crazy group. This is the freaking Rand Corporation. They did a study and they looked at over a 45-year period, starting in the 70s and going forward. They found that the working class of this country, the bottom 90% of us, saw a basic screw job of about $45 trillion in wealth being extracted from us over that period of time and going upwards through lost wages, through our health care being taken away, through our pensions being eviscerated, through loss of health, sick time, vacation, you name it, through all the things that we used to take for granted that they have clawed back, taken away, destroyed, privatized, gigized, however you want to throw that. Massive, massive redistribution of wealth. All the while, you go back to the 60s when the CEO was making 20 times what the guy on the shop floor was making. Now over 300 times. The Kroger CEO, 909 times. While the people who are working at Kroger, a good percentage of them are homeless. You go, how is that right? You know how it happens? Because we all got sold on this idea. If you work hard, you play by the rules, you'll get ahead but you got to work hard because those CEOs, they work hard. Yeah, they work hard at moving money from one pocket to the other, from yours to theirs. They are masterful at moving money from your pocket to theirs. The problem is it never gets into your pocket. And this is the frustrating part. And this was where the conversation focused because, this person that I was talking to has bought wholly into this idea that we can all be billionaires. We just have to have the right idea. We have to work hard. We have to be diligent. And bought into this idea that if you're poor, it's your fault. And the reality is poor working people are poor because they're not making enough money. The wages that they earn aren't sufficient because they don't have the bargaining power to demand better wages. And it comes back to what this Treasury Department report is saying, that they don't have the bargaining power, that corporate America has got the power to keep wages down. And oh, by the way, there's a word for it, Monsopony. You can look it up in the dictionary. It's there. And we didn't need a study to tell us this because we all know it. It's what we've been living. And that's the frustrating part of where we are. Because all of the things, all of the outrage, all of the stuff that they keep throwing at us, meant to divide us, meant to keep us pitted against each other, is solely for the purpose to rip us off. To keep robbing us, to keep stealing from us, to keep the pipeline going from your pocket, from my pocket, to theirs. Defeating their great-great-grandchildren who will never have to work a day in their lives at the expense of, your children today. And the question is when do you get tired of it? When do we elect people who are going to finally go to Congress and do things that need to get done? Look, when Intel wanted money to build a plant in Columbus, we gave them money. Joe Biden gave them money. Look, and I'm okay with it to a degree. But you know what they did? Stock buybacks, massive stock buybacks. They didn't need the money. It just meant more for them. It's outrageous. And we got to demand better. Just my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. On the other side, going to talk with our good friend Scott Paul about what's going on in Ukraine and maybe some Russia stuff on top of that. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast at thericksmithshow.com. Take the program on the go. Right back after this. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
For a long period of time, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do.
I started my career in the operations field, just kept taking on new projects.
There's so many different opportunities that you can pursue in clean energy. But it was really great to know that there was a company so close to home in the renewable energy business.
Investment in the area would be huge. It would be great to be able to expand the area and give people jobs.
Having these opportunities for the younger generation would mean a lot for our community.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as we have banned buying oil from Russia, and again, Joe Biden was not buying oil from Russia. ExxonMobil was. All of the big oil companies were. Joe Biden wasn't. He didn't have oil tanks in his backyard. He wasn't stocking up. I can't believe how many emails I got from people going, Joe Biden's buying oil. No, Joe Biden wasn't buying oil. But this is an interesting story. China evidently is considering buying stakes in the Russian oil companies and the energy companies. I got to wonder what happens if Russia goes in, bails them out. Or, I mean, if China goes in and bails Russia out, what does that mean for us? And is this, again, the realigning of the world's economy where China, Russia, those folks kind of, Iran, North Korea, here to share some thoughts on what that could look like. I mean, it's complicated, it's messy. Who knows at this point? That's why I've asked our good friend Scott Paul to come talk with us. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it is great to be with you tonight.
So, I mean, we're in a really chaotic moment. We're in a really ugly, horrible, painful, tragic, deadly moment. But, I mean, so much up in the air.
Yeah. The economic consequences of this, which I think are important to discuss because they're unavoidable, irrespective of the outcome. And I certainly hope that Russia withdraws and is vanquished by the Ukrainians. But setting all of that aside, this is going to disrupt the way the world economy works. I don't think there's any question about that. And you're seeing it now in energy markets, and with the United States choosing to disconnect itself from Russian energy, the kind of the market shock, I guess, that accompanies that. Things will adjust, and we produce more more hydrocarbons than any other country in the world, right? So we'll actually feel the impact the least of all of this, and it's another reminder why a transition to renewable makes us less dependent on foreign sources, whether it's from the Middle East or Russia, and therefore doesn't limit our options when it comes to foreign policy or other types of priorities that we have. And then, we've seen this happen already with respect to the internet, where China closed off its internet a long time ago. Russia is following suit. And you're seeing that with respect to banking. And it's not only central banks that are doing that, the Europeans, the United States, it's also private actors like Visa and MasterCard. And so this will kind of reorder the way things work. I think the impact for us here in the United States, again, there'll probably be some supply and demand shocks as we kind of figure this out. But I think the impact for the rest of the world could be a little more profound and disruptive. And this is where European companies in particular that have close trade ties with China or even more dependence on trade relationships with China than we do, and in some cases Russia, are gonna feel this a little more and may have a different response than we might.
I mean, this is one of those moments where, you and I have been having conversations for years about, American manufacturing, about domestic production, about producing things in friendlier countries and not going to places that use slave labor, not going to communist countries to do things. This is one of those moments, and I'm not taking any glee or any happiness in this, but this is one of those moments where you go, you had to see this coming. I mean, you had to go at some point. This was going to come to a head one way or another. Either China was going to pull something like this, or it was going to be Russia. This was almost inevitable, I think.
Yeah, it's I hate to delve too much into history, but I think sometimes it's important to have that perspective. Way back before World War One, there was a tremendous amount of economic interdependence that was being developed because of shipping and what have you. And there was a lot of trade, and there were a lot of economies that had imports and exports, and that had accelerated at a very fast pace. And the fashionable thing to think, Rick, at the time was that this kind of interdependence would mean that any sort of conflict was impossible because the risks would be too high to that stability. And within a couple of years, right? I mean, what happened? World War One, which at the time was cataclysmic, and the worst war that certainly Europe had ever seen. And then, so you rewind to the end of the Cold War, and the theory is that this is the end of history, that conflict is done, that countries, because of economic liberalization and the digital age, are moving, unavoidably towards a path of greater freedom and democracy and economic interdependence, and that nothing was going to stand in that way. And we've obviously seen that kind of idea busted up as well. And it's assuming that everybody thinks the way that neoliberal thinkers think, and that's the big mistake that the United States of America makes, is that we have this blind faith, I think, in this philosophy, and that's I think that's come off now. That certainly Trump didn't reflect that, and I don't think that National Democrats reflect that anymore. And there's this realization that, hey, the theory may be great, but this is the real world. This isn't how it's working. We need to think seriously about how we can beef up our own capabilities here. We don't want to put a wall around anybody, but we do want to make sure that we maintain all the options we want when it comes to foreign policy decisions or economic decisions, and that we have those capabilities, because we can't count on China or Russia to believe in the same philosophy or theory that the fashionable economic thinkers in the United States here do.
No, I'm right there with you. The analogy I've always used is, when I leave my house, I do lock the door. I just haven't dug a giant moat all the way around my house. I'm a protectionist. I protect my stuff. I'm just not an isolationist. I enjoy people coming over just when I want them to, and I think that's kind of the be friendly when we want to be. But here's the thing: I think we're living this moment in history where we're dealing with a madman, because this makes no sense. It doesn't conform to any of the thought processes that any of us can imagine, because it's bad all the way around. It's hurting every economy. It's destroying Ukraine. I mean, even if he does take over Ukraine, there's not going to be much left there to take over, because he's carpet bombing the hell out of it. So there's almost no point to it other than just chaos and destruction, and who knows what the end game here is, but just chaos and misery.
Yeah, I hope that's not the case. And the thing about, I guess the thing about the EU or NATO and transatlantic relationships is that they can be dysfunctional, during periods of relative calm, and there's bickering and there's disputes and all of that. And I know Trump wasn't a fan, I think wrongly, of that. But when a crisis, comes about, they kind of did the right thing. I think, the EU and NATO to the extent that they could. And so I think that is helpful. And obviously they've seen what Putin is capable of and what he's not capable of, right? On the one hand, he's capable of invading a country. On the other hand, their military doesn't look as great as maybe everybody thought. And so I certainly don't know how this ends, but I do know one thing: this doesn't end well for Russia.
No,
under any circumstance.
No,
this ends terribly for Russia.
And the one funny story, and I don't mean that there's nothing funny about this entire situation, but if there is a funny story, the one funny story that came out of this is the fact that the Russian personnel carriers got stuck in the mud because they were using Chinese tires.
Yeah, I noted that. Yeah, it's a bad idea to build your army on cheap tires from China. That's for sure. And which, by the way, we have been arguing for like 15 years, and we're glad that the U.S. does not, use Chinese tires for its military, for example. Just saying that. But to turn this around to something that is serious, we and I know we've talked about this before. We had a retired Brigadier General, John Adams, do a report on our vulnerabilities in critical supply chains in national security back in 2013. So it's been almost, 9-10 years since we released this report. And a couple of those key materials were nickel, uranium, where we have a huge dependence on Russia for those, and also engines for rocket launches, right? And so those were vulnerabilities that we've known about for 20 years. And now lawmakers are like, they're like, okay, all right, now we have to do something about this because the crisis is real, right? And so I think that, I don't think there's any real true silver linings in conflict or war, but the response and how we respond to it, I think, is very important. And I think the lesson that lawmakers are drawing from this and the administration is that it is time to accelerate efforts to reshore those supply chains, whether it's semiconductors or those critical materials that we need. Because, if Putin's going to do this, he's not the only one. I mean, what does China want to do in Taiwan? The exact same thing,
right? The
exact same thing. And so, we should not count on this as a one-off, and unfortunately, we're going to have to prepare for the worst case scenario here, and that's why it's important to build up those semiconductor, other electronic capabilities in the United States.
No, I'm right there with you, and look, we're on the same page on this. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Scott Paul. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. If you got a thought, question, comment, you want to chime in, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. You're just now joining us. Make sure you grab the podcast so you never miss a second. Now, Scott, I understand Congress banned the oil. That's a good thing. We'll talk about that in a minute. Starve of some resources. Also talking about banning some trade stuff. Going and officially suspending Russia from the WTO, basically just cutting them off in every way, shape, or form. This pretty remarkable, historic, I would argue.
This is we have a lot of tools with respect to tariffs and sanctions that we can deploy. And some of those have been deployed already, by the Federal Reserve and by central banks in collaboration with Europe about kind of how payments can be conducted. The private sector largely followed along there. Some corporations, to their great credit, and it could be after the fact, have kind of done this, have divested more or less voluntarily without government instruction. I think seeing the writing on the wall here. And understanding how incredibly unpopular this would be for all of their stakeholder communities, right? And so what Congress can do is they obviously can't withdraw Russia by itself from the World Trade Organization, but they can instruct our team at the World Trade Organization to begin that process, to try to begin that process. Unfortunately, the WTO is broken. We know this, you know this. And so I'm not going to hold my breath that's going to happen. I think it was a mistake to let Russia in the first place. I think it was a really bad idea because it's not a transparent economy. It's not, it's not really market-based when it comes right down to it. It's run by oligarchs and the government. So I think it was a mistake to begin with, but they'll try to unwind that. They will ban the energy imports from Russia, which I think is important. And then I think there's still an open question about whether or not to raise tariffs on other Russian products. We do have 25% tariffs in place on Russian steel, on Russian aluminum right now. We don't have a lot of two-way trade with Russia. I will say it's pretty limited. But there might also be the opportunity to revoke permanent normal trade relations with Russia, which is interesting because back in the old Soviet days, it was predicated on the free immigration of Jews and other minorities, and obviously the stakes are different now, and it is a great irony that Putin is basing his campaign on this kind of denazification of a country, Ukraine, that has 1 million Jews, that has a Jewish president, and that has a great deal of tolerance there. And it's Putin's the one who's acting more like Hitler.
Well, I mean, the reasons and the rationale, it's like a moving target. They keep changing by the day. Just wait a minute. It'll change again. The last one I heard is with the gay parades, I guess, is the latest rationale of why it happened. So tomorrow, I'm expecting another excuse any day now, which is why this is just crazy. And I don't see what the end game would have been. It makes no sense to me on any level. But here's, for me, the outcome of this, the awakening is what I'm looking for. Because I've been talking about this for a very long time, rebuilding our domestic ability to produce. Like for instance, one of the things I've been talking about for years, the fact that we produce almost no automobile parts. If you want to buy a replacement part for your car, good luck. They're out of the box. Half of them are no good. Probably more than half of them are no good because they're cheap Chinese knockoffs or who knows where they're from. I say we need to bring this stuff back and start thinking about where things are sourced in a much better way and seriously have this conversation as a country of, hey, what kind of a manufacturing base, what kind of a country are we going to have? And who are we going to be dealing with and dependent on? Are we going to be dependent on communist China? Are we going to be dependent on countries that hate us? And I say no. Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. It reminds me, Rick, what you're saying of the response to an action, a very good action that Biden took last week on ensuring the government is buying American, or when it's buying stuff, exactly the types of things that you're talking about. And Biden said, and I agree with him, that ultimately what he's trying to do is increase supply in the United States, which will reduce inflation. And he's absolutely right about it. It's the right kind of supply side economics. Okay, this is how you do it. Critics said, well, it costs more in the United States, so and buying American costs more, neglecting the fact that they don't count the cost of lost jobs. They don't count the cost when something is delayed by shipping or by political crisis or by some dependence or the fact that carbon pollution isn't factored into it or labor exploitation or anything like that. They don't count any of that stuff. And so I think that for a number of reasons, understanding we don't want to be dependent on Russia or China for critical materials. I think for having more of a supply capability here in the United States that will reduce inflationary pressures. And just frankly, because of jobs, it's going to create good jobs in this country. As well, middle class jobs that have benefits. That's a good reason to take on all these reshoring activities from Biden's kind of Made in America program for the federal government to infrastructure to a more aggressive trade posture. but we do have to find ways to get those back, and that does include providing incentives for businesses to do the right thing as well, so that we can get some of that semiconductor manufacturing back in the United States that had drifted offshore over the last couple of decades.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Let me ask you the last line of questioning though, because here's the kind of the concern, and I think we'll see where this plays out. I saw this story that obviously Russia's been cut off from the payment systems that have been set up globally. There's talk of going something with China. We've been talking for years about the BRIC countries setting up currency that they can a BRIC currency that they can do trade in as an alternative to the dollar. And there's been a movement to try and get away from Western kind of economy stuff for a while. Do you see the globe moving in kind of that bi-parallel kind of way? Or do you just not see Russia having the size of an economy that's possible to move forward on?
Yeah. Russia is a blip on the global economy scene, and it's tricky. And the only thing, it's a gas station, Rick. I mean, that's what it is. It's fuel. That's about 100% of what it's worth on the global economy. But if what I think that some folks are rightly concerned about is, what does this mean for dollar dominance, or does this speed up types of cryptocurrency and digital currency portfolios? I don't think that this strengthens China's government ability with respect to the yuan, because the yuan's still not transparent enough for people to understand what it's all about, and it can't be freely bought and sold. The Chinese government says how much you can do of that necessarily. So right now, I don't think there's a credible threat, but I certainly do think that there's reason to believe, that there are unpredictable and chaotic outcomes of conflict. Always, whether it's accelerating trends or technological shifts or power dynamics, and so it is quite possible. But it's at the same time, I think it's very hard to bet against the U.S. dollar, because it still is the world's reserve currency, and certainly it's the best bet right now. And the fact that the ruble is worth less than a penny speaks to that.
Yeah, you need wheelbarrows to get a loaf of bread. But no matter what happens, they're still going to be paying. There's still going to be struggle going around, especially in Ukraine and in Russia.
Yeah.
But even here, I mean, as gas prices go up, the cost of inflation is going to go up. The cost of manufacturing is going to go up. Nothing good in this at all. Nothing.
Yeah. Let's hope for a swift and peaceful end, and that the folks responsible for perpetuating all of this, Putin and all of his cronies and his allies, are banished, basically,
from your
to
lips.
The dustbin of history.
Scott, I appreciate the time, man. As always, great stuff.
All right. Thanks, Rick. You as well.
Our good friend Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. Make sure you check out their website, AmericanManufacturing.org. We'll get links out on social media and how you can check that out. No, I mean we're in a weird spot. We're in an interesting time. They say may you live in interesting times. These are most certainly interesting times. We're living history. We're living. You go back and you read about the madmen of the past, and you go, why did these crazy people do the things they did? Why did you see these wars erupt? Why did people get behind Hitler? Why did a generation of people sign up and fight and become what they became? We're watching it happen. We're watching the propaganda machines. We're watching the lies. We're watching the distortions. And in the end, and this is where I struggle with my my visceral reactions to any war, which is negative. Nobody wins in a war. War only makes rich people rich and poor people dead. That's my central tenet to any conflict whatsoever. Rich people are always they're going to be the ones to always do well. Poor people are the ones who fight it. But in this, I look at one rich guy sending poor and working class kids from his country, and now recruiting poor people from Syria to come fight in Ukraine. Because maybe people in Russia aren't going to do it. And we don't know because there's no independent media there to report it. Maybe there aren't enough poor and working class Russian kids there who are going to sign up to die for Putin's whatever. Maybe they need poor people from Syria to come in. But there's one a-hole in all this, and it's Putin. For me, this is that simple. Love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any of today's program, make sure you download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And make sure you check out Scott Paul's website, americanprogress.org. I mean, americanmanufacturing.org. We'll get links out on social media. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about what's going on Amazon as workers there are beginning, are organizing, are about to have their vote. Back after this.
I've been driving buses for 5 years, and my day-to-day routine is I wake up a little earlier than most people. I get on a bus, I go out, I pick up some students and make sure they get to school nice and safe. Here in Fairbanks, Alaska, that can be a challenge because of the winter weather and the icy roads, but I love the job. So the Teamsters are great. They provide us a lot of protections. They've always taken care of their people, made sure that our jobs were secure. We didn't have to worry about whether or not we'd have a job from day to day.
And that's amazing because before we'd be working 4, 6, 8 hours a day and only earning minimum wage was real difficult to make a living. And then the Teamsters pushed a lot so we make something we can live off of and not have to have a second job. What absolutely gives me peace of mind, the union membership allows me to focus on this job without having to worry about whether or not my family is going to be taken care of. I'm Andrew Case and I'm proud to be Teamsters Local 959.
Back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any of the program thus far, podcast. Did I mention podcast? Yes, podcast. Download the podcast. Lord. Now highlighting how crazy the elections have been right here in my state of Pennsylvania. David McCormick, the China-friendly businessman, he is leading Mahet Oz in the state primary 24-15. There's a bunch of other crazy behind them. But right now they seem to be the two blowing the most money on TV ads. You cannot turn the TV on without seeing the two of them attacking each other. And good, as long as they're eating each other and tearing each other up, good. Maybe we'll end up with a decent senator. I'm hoping for John Fetterman. Be happy with Connor Lamb. Either way, I'm fine. Also, Ohio's looking crazy too. The Fox News poll there has the Senate primary looking just as nuts. Mike Gibbons is leading the Senate primary there with 22% in front of Josh Mandel, the Trump wannabe. J.D. Vance way back. Sorry, Hillbilly Elegy, way back. Jane Timken, the rich one. Wow, I'm really shocked at that. 9%, and Matt Dolan 7%. There's a bunch of other folks there in the who knows range. But it's interesting to see there. And in the governor race in Georgia, kind of a surprise. Trump's person not doing so well. Kemp leading that one 50-39 over the Trump-backed David Perdue. So as much as I don't like Kemp, and as much as I think they did try to steal the election for Trump, I don't want to see David Perdue. Don't like him. Just is what it is. But yeah, there it is. And finally, I got to get this out because it's one of those things that is frustrating to me for all of my anti-vax fans, because we don't need to get no stinking vaccine. According to Haaretz, a 4-year-old boy from Jerusalem who has not been vaccinated against polio, you know where this is going, was diagnosed with the virus, making the first case in Israel since 1988. So yay, polio's back. But we don't need no stinking vaccines. Polio, it's just a common cold. Jesus. Crazy. It is what it is, though. It's the world we live in, folks. The world we live in. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you follow us on social media at Rick Smith Show on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all that stuff. Subscribe, like, share, all of it. Thanks for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.